And we have, we're recording this again for those. We had several families register for this presentation. We also understand this is a really private topic, and it's hard to get on a group call and to talk about like feelings and everybody's kind of place in the ALS journey, right? And yet our entire team is really focused on helping to do events like this that give nudges to have those conversations, to make it a little bit easier, and for everybody to know they're not alone. And so for anyone that's watching this, that's our hope tonight. We want you to know that you are not alone, that you have others throughout the state, unfortunately, that are also on the ALS journey. In Texas, we know that there are more than 3,000 young caregivers, 3,000, y'all. And when we say young caregivers, that's 30 years old and then down to the youngest of 5, because we know that there's 5-year-olds that are helping with feeding tubes and they're helping with other equipment. So we want to normalize the conversation so that everybody feels comfortable in asking for help and saying, how do I even have these conversations? We also want everyone to know there's not a right or wrong way to do it. The reason that we wanted to get this panel together and really highlight this month is Caring with Love. And we focused on young caregivers this month in a few different ways. And we want to highlight their responsibility and commitment. And it's unique too, because again, there's school, there's applying for college, there's applying for classes to get into high school. There's all these things that are happening along the way, just like for those living with ALS and their partners and spouses, right? Water heaters are still breaking in the midst of everything. There's weddings being planned. There's so many things happening outside of ALS. ALS doesn't stop, and the other things don't stop it as well. So just know there's no right or wrong. This is an open discussion. Warren, since you are the only one right now that has joined, you can feel free to ask questions or comments along the way. You can put in the chat whatever you want to. Thank you. Again, I wish we could all meet in person and just be sitting around and having just a conversation in a living room. And that's what we're going to try to make this feel like, okay? Even though it's virtual, where we're all connecting and just sharing from the heart in the hope that it will help someone else, and it also helps us and connect with others. Sound like a plan? All right. Well, I'm going to now introduce our young caregiver panel. And again, if we have some others joining us, I will make sure to introduce them as well. I will start, Jyoti, if you don't mind, I'll start with you, and then we'll move over to Peyton and Logan and let y'all share a little bit about yourself, and we'll kind of get started in our discussion.
So my name is Jyoti, and I am in 12th grade, and I'm 18 years old. And as Harney was saying, I live in the Dallas Metroplex. And my dad was diagnosed with ALS about 5 years ago. And I have a sister, so we are my sister, myself, my mom are kind of the caretakers. We've been able to find some outside help as well, which has been really important to be able to go to school, my mom go to work. And so now my sister's in college, and my mom and I are kind of the primary caretakers, although my sister's here as well. And that's kind of, I guess, the summary of my story.
Thank you, Jyoti. And I want to add that Jyoti has been active for quite some time in advocacy and fundraising for ALS. And she also serves on our youth leadership council to help kind of guide some of our programming and support for young caregivers. So thank you, Jyoti. All right, Logan and Peyton.
My name's Logan. I am 14, almost 15 years old. I'm a freshman in high school. My dad got diagnosed around 8 years ago, so I was around 7 or 8 years old.
I'm Peyton. Like Logan said, he got diagnosed like 8 years ago, so I was 4, and I am 12 in 6th grade.
And we live in the Austin area.
All right, thanks so much for joining us, y'all. I'm really glad that we have a few different ages, because with each age, especially when you get middle school and up, every year is so different, right? It's just, you're changing, your environment's changing. And then when you have someone you love living with ALS, and for y'all, for the caregivers that are joining us tonight, it's your parent, right? And sometimes for families, it's grandkids. Some grandkids live in the home, or they're very, very close to their grandparents. And we encourage all of you to join our monthly peer group, because we have those sisters, brothers, grandchildren, kids, nieces, nephews. Everybody is affected, and everybody has emotions involved in it. And again, for our panelists tonight, our young caregivers tonight, they are helping to provide care for a parent. And so I wanted to give that perspective, because it's going to be very different, again, for every family and depending upon the relationship and dynamics. I do want to say that kids are smart. And we know that. Kids are brilliant and intelligent, and they want to know more than we likely think. I would say probably 98% of the time. And tonight we'll talk a little bit about kind of how you can have those tough conversations about ALS. And we've got many resources that I want you to be aware of too after this to help with those conversations for all age levels. How you can have the conversation with a 5-year-old, how their brain works, and how you can introduce the conversation. And then for teenagers, because it's very different, how everybody's involved or can be involved in caregiving. And so we're going to talk about a few different things tonight. And I want to make sure I share with you that this is not the end of the conversation or resources. We have many others, and you can reach out to me anytime. So kids generally want to know more. They already observe more than you may think. And so my first question for the panel, and y'all feel free to ask or answer whomever wants to, and for each of you, I would like to ask them, these are questions I've heard many times over the last 2.5 years. But the first question is, how old were you when you were told about the ALS diagnosis, and how were you told?
Well, I can start. I was in 7th grade, I think. It was some summer. I think it was summer before 7th. And I was told in a way that you probably don't ever want to be told, which is that I found out by mistake. And essentially what happened to me is, my family's not very good at keeping secrets, and I'm glad that they kind of kept it from me for a little bit, because I don't think like I myself was ready to handle that. But once I knew, I couldn't not know. But my dad had basically fallen, and we had gone to the hospital, and I was with him, and the doctor had asked if he had any conditions. And then he kind of looked at me for a second, and then he said he had ALS. And that was kind of when I first knew. And obviously that was not ideal way to find out. But I don't know if there ever really is an ideal way to find out. I think it's difficult to find time to sit down, because it's a very difficult conversation, and people not finding out to the point where you have the opportunity to sit down is also very difficult, because I don't think my sister was told directly either. So I think the important part is not how you tell people, at least for me. I think it was important for me that I eventually found out, and how we discussed it after, that wasn't kind of left there.
Absolutely, because there's a lot of discussions that happen after that. And you said you kind of suspected before the fall, or was the fall the first indication?
I mean, I'm sure I suspected, but I didn't really want to suspect, so I decided not to suspect anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like he fell a lot, but they just said he had back issues, which seemed believable, so I believed that. It was just convenient to believe, so it was something to hold on to, but I don't think I ever expected what it became.
Yeah. Thank you, Jyoti. Thanks for sharing that. What Peyton and Logan, what about y'all?
So like I said, my dad was diagnosed 8 years ago, so I was in 1st grade. Honestly, I think neither of us remember too much about it, but I think I remember a little bit more since I was older. I remember my parents sitting us down and they told us pretty early on. My dad got diagnosed early April 8 years ago, and um, they I remember them telling us very soon after. So I remember them sitting us down, and since we were young and she was small and I was small, and I remember them explaining it in a light way. So for those families that do have young children, I know the progression for ALS is so different for every single family, and some families experience progression that's very fast, and some families don't even go to a wheelchair till 2 years in. And so I know that it can be very different. But for us, my dad had like a middle-ish progression. So at the beginning, yeah, it was a pretty slow progression. And so at the beginning when they told us lightly, I think it was very good, and I took it well, and we are pretty positive children. So I think that the way we took it was like, okay, things are going to be different in our home now, but it's still our dad and everything's still going to be okay. Things are going to change, but this is how our life is now. And I think that it was like a light way to take it. And for us, because fortunately we had a slow progression, it was good and it didn't take us too much at once. So,
Yeah,
Can
I
you think of
mean,
that?
I don't remember anything from it at all, which I'm kind of glad I don't remember anything from it because it's yeah,
Life altering.
but no, and I guess how Logan explained it, just like how they kind of put it lightly on us, is kind of a good way to do it. But
Yeah.
Kind of just in kind of those baby steps and almost as needed discussion, right? And kind of doing it that way. And for
Yeah.
y'all were really young. Peyton, you especially were young, and I know I have visited with several, young adults and youth and children that have shared. I was super young, and this is all I've known. Again, maybe it's a slow progression, or so this is all I remember. So it wasn't ever a change for me. It's what I've grown up in. So it can go in so many different ways. It can be what you've grown up in, or it can literally change overnight. And so
Yeah.
I appreciate y'all sharing that. That every situation is different. How and again, I'll just throw this out there for whomever. How involved are y'all in the caregiving situation? And I think that's multifaceted, not only in hands-on care, right? And doing things. Come home from school, maybe you help, feed your dad, or I'm using that as an example of what I've heard. But how involved are you as a family in knowing that everybody's responsibility has changed and increased a little bit too, right?
I mean, I would say that I'm fairly involved. I mean, we're lucky we're able to have caretakers who come because my mom goes to work and I go to school, and there's nobody here during the day, so somebody has to come to help. But in the evenings and sometimes on days when a caretaker can't come, I'm pretty involved. I mean, yeah, I would say just on a daily basis, some of the things I do are just the normal suctioning and like the trach suction, and sometimes the breathing treatment, sometimes the feeding and everything. And then it can get so much to the extent if we don't have a caretaker, I mean, my mom or my sister or something will do the whole moving process, and that's much more nuanced and difficult, and I don't like those days. But it just really depends on who we have.
Yeah, fortunately, we were very, very lucky to have so much care and so much help in our home. So I mean, I personally don't have very much involvement in my dad's care. We do have times where we will be left alone with him for a little bit if mom has to go run an errand and there's no
Or if
caretakers,
one calls out.
or if a
Frequent.
caretaker calls out, which can be frequent. And so I think that when we're left alone with dad for a while, we both, more so Peyton because she's put in those positions more than I am, but we are capable to do the suction occasionally. It gets more difficult as it slowly progresses. Now that my dad has had a trach, and I think he's had a trach for 3 years, it's kind of it gets way more complicated as it progresses. But like I said, fortunately, I mean, I don't have very much involvement in the care, which is how I like it to be. And like Jyoti said, like we help sometimes pull up my dad in the bed and help move him if he needs to be moved when there's no caretakers. But that's all it is for me.
For me, it's because I can't really do much. They don't really trust a 12-year-old to, suction with the trach and everything. So I don't want to help with that stuff either. Like my mom shows me how to do it and everything in case I'm left home alone with him. But it's definitely like not a choice that I'd like to help take care of my dad. Like I don't think it's like no one would choose to take care of help your dad, but or parent or whoever's sick. But like just helping sometimes, but it's not enjoyable, and like even helping pull him up, I'm not really strong enough. So, but like frequent calls out, like caretaker call, when a caretaker calls out, it's like you have to do more than usual.
But we are very fortunate to have so much care in our house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and each day we say a lot that each day can be a new normal, and that's a new normal in a lot of different ways. Where again, you said a caregiver may call out, so that changes how your day is going to go. And y'all both said, Logan and Peyton, you're like we don't do a whole lot, and Logan, you said, and I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. I know that youth and children and young adults like you all can feel more valued and included when they're part of those conversations. So would you say that you all, and this is again very subjective and it's different for every family, but just for y'all, do you want to be more included in the conversations, less included, or is it what you need at this time and at your age in your life right now?
For me, I want to be more included. I mean, I think I am included, so I like more inclusion as I am now. Because I think especially as being a young adult, you're in this kind of weird position where you're like a secondary caretaker, but then you're still a caretaker and you're also still your parents and stuff. And so I think, I mean, at least for me, when my sister went to college, it was me, my mom, and our caretakers. And so we were kind of the team, and I had a good amount of involvement in his care. And so it's kind of honestly a sense of kind of ownership that like, this is kind of my responsibility and this is my family. And I want to be able to play a role in the care for this and the decisions. And so, and I also think it's kind of about a level of control because there are so many things out of control that having some involvement in the conversations or the things that you can do about that is really valuable. So I'm also older. I'm about to go to college, but I definitely value being part of the conversations.
Thanks, Jyoti.
Yeah, personally, at the age I'm at, I don't really love to be involved, but that's just for me. I like to know the very important things, and I do like to know how my dad's feeling and how he slept one night. I do like to know some little details, but personally for me, I don't really like to be that involved because sometimes it puts a lot of pressure on me and can scare me a little bit. So I feel like that's the way I feel. I think as I get older, I might want to be more involved, but at this point and this stage in the game where I am now, I don't like to know too much.
For me, we're both involved in not a lot, but enough. But I think I'd rather be involved a little bit more and kind of knowing what's happening so I can kind of know what to not look out for, but what So like if one day he gets so sick and he has to go to the hospital, that it's not like a whole shock for me. It's like, oh, I knew that he wasn't feeling well. And like this was a situation. So I kind of wish they told me a little bit more about what was going on. So I could be like kind of just know more what's going on. But I think they do an okay job of telling us of what we should know. And
Yeah, I
But-
think they distribute it pretty well.
but because we just have so many, it's so different for both of us. She doesn't
Yeah.
want to know that much and I want to know more. So
Yeah, so it's just so different for everybody.
Yeah, and it's different, as we keep saying, and we will keep saying, it's different for every family, and it's different for every child in the family, right? I am obviously way older and grown, and my brother and I are totally different personalities in every different way, and how we approach life, how we our responsibility, approach to responsibility. So there's so many things to consider. And I'm so loving y'all's transparency and vulnerability. And it's not easy. And yet our ALS community needs this. They need to hear from y'all and to just give them, like I said, a few different directions, because we've already heard different approaches, right? And different needs from y'all. And so sharing your feelings it's so important not to keep it inside. How does your family approach giving you an opportunity to voice your feelings?
I mean, honestly, it's just kind of normal. I mean, we don't necessarily have like deep, intense discussions a lot, but I don't feel uncomfortable talking if I need to. And we don't necessarily call like a big family meeting if we all kind of have.
Yeah, we're going to discuss our feelings tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Then nobody wants to talk anymore. But like I'll talk to my sister, I'll talk to my mom, I'll sit with my dad. So I wouldn't say that we have like specific opportunities to speak about those things, but I think just a comfort level of being able to speak about it when I need to is there.
Yeah, I think for us, or me at least, we have pretty much the same way. We have school, we have extracurricular activities, so I think a lot of us are in and out of the house all the time, and we don't have like a dedicated family time where we're all together and we're all doing this and we're all having like a discussion all together. But I think like I'm at the same place to where I'm comfortable enough to tell my dad something or tell my mom something. And I know me and Peyton communicate a lot. And so we just share those opinions with our parents sometimes.
for me, yeah, kind of. I talk to Logan, I think, more than anyone else. But because I like mom has so much to do, like work and taking care of dad. And I obviously kind of don't want to bother my dad with it because he, goes through more than obviously what I'm going to tell him or anything. And overall, we're not really a very emotional family. We don't really, which we probably honestly need to work on, but we don't really express our feelings to each other that much. And so for us, it's not like, that's not really normal for us to do that. But, which I definitely think we need to work on. But,
But overall, I think between the two of us and my mom and dad, everybody has pretty good communication. And I think our parents can usually tell when we have an opinion about something. But
Yeah, it's hard for parents and for kids, and Peyton, you mentioned, I know my mom's got a lot going on. I don't want to bother my dad with these things, but you're 12 and there's some things happening in life too that you need to talk about. There's just that natural progression, and all these big milestones for you are happening too. And it's hard to balance and to want to share. Do I share? How important is this? And it's really hard for parents to make time. There's so much going on. So when you are helping to provide care for a loved one, for your moms, and in both of y'all's cases, it's your mom that's, helping to provide care for your dads. It's really hard, no matter, and I'm gonna say this with confidence. I know as a mom, it's hard for her to make time for everything and to make time for everyone. no matter how badly she wants that in her heart. How does your family approach giving each of you the unique and dedicated time that you need? Because you do need that, right? It's important, but it's so hard to carve out. So how does that work for y'all?
I mean, I like to say something about the earlier thought first really quickly, which is just that so I'm about to go to college. My mom always talks about how she wants us to be able to do more things together because she feels like she just missed out on so much of my high school and stuff because of all of this. And I know that what she's always wanted from me is just more communication to her and tell her how I feel. So I would just say to you, Peyton, that I don't know much about your family, but I know at least in my family that everybody has their own experience with ALS, but it doesn't invalidate the other. So just because my dad is going through ALS and it's horrible doesn't mean that my loss of a father is any less horrible. And so I don't want to impose this on you, but I'm just saying in my experience, I know that's really valuable that your parents maybe want to hear that from you because they want to be a part of your life and they want to know what's happening with you, and they'll make the time if they know that that's what you're experiencing, because they definitely want to hear that. And they definitely care about what you're going through as much as they are, because it's traumatic for everybody involved, no matter if you're the mom or you're the dad or you're the kid or you're the grandma. Everybody's losing something of themselves in this. And so I think it's valuable and impactful no matter from what vantage point you're in.
That's so true, Jyoti. Thank you. And what you touched on, you said it's traumatic for everybody, and that's right, it's trauma. Even if you're not talking about it or emotional, that type of person, it's trauma, and there's anticipatory grief every day. And Peyton even mentioned that too. I'd like to know more. So if we have to go to the hospital, because that's always in your mind too. What if this happens? So you're kind of in a heightened state of awareness of what you need to be prepared for. So that's a really good point.
Yes, and then to the question about the dedicated time, I think what's really important, I mean, I know my family has the privilege to be able to do this, but even though my dad has ALS and we still love for him, care for him, he's my dad, but we also need to remember that both of our lives need to keep going on, and that we want to live as normal of a life as we can, and we want to be able to go out and do things without just being stopped. And I know that for many cases this isn't possible for many families, but we're so fortunate to just be able to live as much of a normalcy as we can through all of this. And I think that's been really important for me, especially because just like starting this whole high school experience, and I think for me it's really important to just remember that this is a normal life, and that although my dad is sick and that it's so traumatic for everybody involved, I think that it's good to just remember that your life should be as normal as it can possibly be. Do you have anything to add to that? Yeah.
And you know what, Logan, that's a perfect segue into what I was going to ask next. And that has ALS changed your priorities? And also, I'm a big believer in purpose and what our purpose in life is. And I know y'all are young, but still thinking about what matters to you. Has ALS changed that on a day-to-day basis and in looking ahead to your future?
I mean, I honestly don't remember who I was before ALS, so I don't know if it's much changed me. But I do know that it makes me prioritize my family more than other people I know. And not saying that it's not okay that they are, but it definitely makes me realize that. And I spend a lot of time with my family, most of it by choice, but it's definitely made me in a weird way closer to my family. I mean, I'm just thinking about what my life would be like if it wasn't happening. My dad would be working, my mom would be working, my sister would be after college and a job. We would just kind of be existing, but probably not coming together as often as we are now. But now when I come home, my dad's sitting in his recliner and I can come sit next to him and we'll talk. And obviously it's not under the best circumstances, but it has definitely made me much closer and more emotionally, and I don't want to say emotionally invested in my family, but just emotionally attached to my family, honestly. And it's made us, I think it's made us closer because we experience shared trauma and we also experience shared adaptations to this trauma. So we have new traditions. We used to travel a lot and now we don't travel as much, obviously, but we have Friday movie night or something, or we all like reading the New Yorker together, a number of things, but kind of going through it together really builds my realizations of my priorities in my family, and also my realizations of something I've realized is there's a quote of everybody is experiencing a battle or is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. And it made me really just resonate with that because I realized how many people at my school or how many people I know are fighting a different battle at home or experiencing a completely different life that I know nothing about. And so that I feel like it has also made me more empathetic as a person.
Mm-hmm. It's so true.
Yeah, for us, I mean, I've only got to experience the unsick, I guess you could say, dad for 7 years. So we were the kind of family who was always doing something. We were always out on the weekends. We were always traveling. We were always doing something. We were just super busy. And now, since we've come to this point, we don't travel anymore. And just certain things we can't do. We used to go out on the boat every Saturday. But we can't do those things anymore, which is okay. And you got to find those like moments where you're able to stay like attached to your family. But I think we're probably the same. We've definitely gotten closer than I think we would be now because of the disease. And we all have like this sense of feeling connected and like feeling like we understand each other because we're all going through this. And even though this is what my dad is diagnosed with and it's what he's suffering with, we're all suffering along with him. Maybe not as severely, of course, but we all are impacted by it.
I feel like there's like I feel like it's also brought us together, but sometimes not kind of with this disease, I feel like there's more interesting things happen, right? Like there's just stuff that could make us so much closer, like these little weird memories that we have of dad with this disease where something funny happened and my dad's always able to make something funny out of something awful or something. And so I feel like some stuff like that can also bring us closer together. And I feel like since we've got it, we're kind of all, it's not the same for us, but it's all surrounded. Like our life's kind of all gone into some part about dad and the sickness and everything. And so I feel like it's brought us closer together in some parts, but also like we're not always spending family time all the time. And we rarely have all four of us in the same room together talking. And so I feel like it's brought us closer in some ways, but also kind of like drifted us farther apart in others.
Yeah, I agree. We have made so many funny, traumatic memories of all of us together during this disease. And I think that's definitely brought us some like joy and I guess you could say hope to the disease and definitely made things a lot lighter on us.
Yeah, y'all, thank y'all so much. Gosh, these just sharing again your experiences because it's so different and so needed for everybody to hear, because I know that for those that are watching and will watch, they're going to be able to resonate with at least one thing, if not many, that the three of you have shared tonight from your perspectives. Y'all, and speaking about perspective, that's really so important in the ALS experience for every person involved, right? You can't change what happens to you, but you can change, and you have the power to control how you react to it. And a sense of humor is key too. And I'm thinking of one of our individuals. He is hilarious. He's been living with ALS for years. He is funny. He's on social media a lot. And when you were talking, it brought to mind, he said, I can hear my kids. And there was a preface to this, but he goes, when I need help, getting out of my wheelchair, I can hear them in the other room doing rock, paper, scissors on whose turn it is. But he talked about that, and he was laughing, and you have to find that perspective in there. And your perspective does change. And actually all of y'all talked about how you've grown closer in some ways, and the empathy for others. And I know that Gabe, who was going to join us tonight and had a conflict, he has shared before that, and there's a quote that's beautiful, and I don't want to do him a disservice, but he shared that having gone through the ALS experience, his dad was diagnosed while he was in high school and passed when he had just started college. And so those were very formative years. And he said, it made me a more empathetic person. It makes me, and it made me value walking, talking, eating, and breathing more than my peers. It made me value time with family more than my peers. And it's given me a greater empathy for people, in every walk of life, and it will throughout my life. When people are hurting, I will understand how that feels. And so I'm summarizing, but those are the things that he said, and I think it's so powerful. As we wrap up, you three brave ladies, and I don't want to say young caregivers, and because there's so much more. You mentioned your activities, the school, and preparing for college and high school, and all of those things. As we wrap up, are there any words of encouragement or anything that you'd like to say to other young adults and youth and children in the state that are sharing an ALS experience?
I would just say that when my dad was first diagnosed, it was pretty lonely. I didn't know any other young caretakers who were experiencing this. And I saw out literature, videos, something to kind of give me some kind of connection. And so I would just say to any young caretaker who is also taking care of a family member with ALS, that there are more of us out there than you think, and that this experience, while people who experience ALS have such a shared connection of just suctioning and feeding, and we all kind of know what that's like, I think there's also a lot more people who are willing to support you, and who also know some form of what it means to go through trauma like this, whether it's ALS or something else, than you may initially realize.
Thank you, Josie.
Yeah, I think my thing would be, I struggle with jealousy sometimes between different people diagnosed with ALS, because since the progression is so different, I would see my dad eating from a feeding tube going down his stomach, and then I would see other people who have been diagnosed the same amount of time walking around in a cane, and that would impact me a lot. And just seeing all my friends and their families do all these things that, I never got to do. And I think that everybody is going through something, and I think that that's important to remember, and that although this is difficult and this is tough, to just be aware that everybody is going through something, and that you're not alone, and then there's so many other of us also. Do you want to say that?
Yeah, I guess, just although there's a lot to like, there's a lot to this disease and everything. Just sometimes the small stuff, like the little things, kind of really make an impact on everything. And I mean, as someone who hears this a lot, like people do have it worse, and it's sometimes annoying to hear that, because you're like, you know what, none of my friends have a sick dad. All of my friends' parents are walking and talking and breathing fine, and my dad's just all. But people honestly do have it worse, and so I feel like, although right now it like feels so unfair and everything, that's always something that kind of is like, oh, you know what? Well, at least I still have my dad, and I still have my mom, and I have my sister with me. So.
Yeah, we were so fortunate. I think through this whole disease, me and Peyton have gotten so much closer than we would have ever been, and I'm very thankful for that relationship between both of us.
Yeah, it's important. Again, when we really started building our education programming and support for young caregivers, and dedicating a lot of resources to that in 2019, I heard from many young caregivers, as Jyoti said, I didn't know there were others like me that were experiencing the same thing. It can feel very isolating. So we do want, and that's what part of tonight is about. We want you to know you're not alone, that there's others that get it. So if you are a young person that's watching this, you can reach out to me and you can connect with others throughout the state. I've got a list of young people that said, hey, put me on a list, and I'm happy to connect with anybody in the state that wants to talk about a shared experience. And you have that, and we have lots of programming and support. If anybody that's watching right now has any questions, feel free to ask those. You can put them in the chat. And I want to extend that opportunity that even after tonight, you can send me those questions, or let us know if you have a need that we can help with. It doesn't stop tonight. So if you've got any questions, feel free to ask those. And again, if our panelists, our amazing young people, have anything else that you want to say, feel free to chime in on that. And if not, we will wrap up this event, but please know that there will be more in the future. This is just the beginning. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking time out, y'all, our panelists. And yes, thank you for sharing tonight. That's one of our ALS team members too that has joined us. And thank you, Warren, for joining us. And again, reach out to our team, anybody on our team, anytime if we can help you. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you again.